Welcome to the second episode of LivByte, the podcast that explores the intersection of technology and innovation. I'm your host, Danielle Doloff, and today we're focusing on the topic of cybersecurity, one of the most pressing issues facing individuals and businesses today. Did you know that cybercrime is expected to cost the world $10.5 trillion annually? That's trillion with a T by 2025. As technology continues to evolve at a rapid pace, cyber threats are becoming increasingly sophisticated and harder to detect. In fact, the average cost of a data breach for businesses is over $3.8 million. It's more important than ever to stay informed about the latest trends and best practices in cybersecurity in order to safeguard against cyber attacks. So, joining us today to dive into this topic, we have two experts from Leventis, Dan Levin, President, and Tim Doloff, EVP of Client Solutions. With decades of combined experience in the cybersecurity industry, they have extensive knowledge of the latest threats and the solutions. Welcome, Dan and Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So we're thrilled to have both of you on the show to share your insights on the latest cybersecurity trends and best practices. So let's just get right into it. So I have a couple questions we're going to run through, and I'd like to, excited to hear your thoughts on each of these. So the first one is, what are some of the latest trends in cybersecurity that businesses and individuals should be aware of?
I'd say some of the obvious ones are, or maybe they're not so obvious, but ransomware is still really big. There's a continuing rise in ransomware that impacts every business, small or large, and it's the number one cause of data breaches. And there's obviously different ways to make ransomware happen, but one of them is an increasing sophistication around phishing, which definitely includes things like social engineering and spear phishing and the rise of artificial intelligence. I'd say the biggest trend that I can think of would be AI, and that's both on the protection side, but also the offensive side. And the artificial intelligence is just getting very sophisticated. I was listening to a story the other day. It's loosely related, but it's about a woman who answered the phone and she thought it was her kid in trouble. And the kid was saying, "Hey, mom, help me. I'm in trouble and these people kidnapped me." And the mom freaked out, obviously, as anyone would, and ran back inside. I think she was in her car at the time, and she ran inside to a hotel or the gym, wherever she was coming from, and just completely freaking out, calling 911, trying to get her kid on the phone, and she couldn't get her kid on the phone. And after, I don't know exactly the whole story of how it unfolded, but it turned out to be a complete scam, and it was artificial intelligence being used. Obviously, that was just an audio covering of the, from an AI perspective, but to her, it sounded exactly like her kid. Her kid ended up calling her like 30 minutes later saying, Mom, what's wrong? I'm in class. What's going on? And, that's just one very small example of a very small piece of artificial intelligence, that being an audio. I don't know exactly what you call that, something that camouflages the real audio, but AI is just huge at the moment and just getting bigger by the day. So I think those are all trends: ransomware, sophisticated phishing, AI.
Yeah, aside from just the sophisticated tools and improvements in the processes that that attackers are using to steal information or to plant malware, ransomware, et cetera, I think the opportunities are increasing as well, and it's partly due to just our remote workforce. Remote working can be a real value to employees as well as to employers in some cases, but there is some extra risks. People's workspaces are not quite as compartmentalized and tight as they used to be, and even simple things that you used to do in person, if somebody needed you to do something, they might walk up to your desk and ask you to do it. Now you're expecting to get that direction from anywhere, and it could be a text message that you got, it could be an email, and so it's a lot easier for attackers to kind of use those digital techniques and those remote mechanisms to try to trigger somebody to give away information or to do something that they shouldn't do. Some common things that we know have happened with recent cyber attacks include phishing that causes someone to transfer money from a bank account to the attacker's account with the intent of just stealing that money. And a lot of the times the people that are responsible for doing that, they think they're getting direction from a boss or from a client that's asking them to do something. And so the remote environment allows that to happen a little bit easier. And you also have to be a little bit more aware of the risks. Data is, private data is in that situation. People are working on their home networks. If there aren't the right tools in place to protect and encrypt the data that they're doing all that data is essentially public. If it's not encrypted, if it's on a Wi-Fi, whether it's your home Wi-Fi and maybe it's not locked down tight enough, or it's on a coffee shop Wi-Fi, those are all ways that attackers can steal passwords, can steal credit card information, can steal banking information, can steal, private information. So I think the remote environment has definitely created more opportunities for cybercrime.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And that got obviously that exponentially bad with COVID. And the one thing I like to actually bring up, because no one really thinks about it, and you kind of alluded to it with all these new entry points, all these new devices, is IoT devices. And people aren't necessarily thinking of the fact that everything is now connected to a network almost, right? I mean, they got everything from smart plugs to, your light switches and
door locks.
And these are not, and door locks. Yeah, these are not known for being secure, right? The firmwares are constantly being updated, but people aren't actively going to their apps of their light switches and door locks and updating firmware. And these are all huge exposures. And so, when you just think of it, and 5G is rolling out, and there's just and that's allowing even more devices to be online, and there's just a enormous universe of entry points to what you think are secure networks, but these entry points are not secure. So thus the networks are not secure. All these fun things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you both talked about are fairly recent trends that have exploded. AI, been around for a while, but exploded recently. Remote work exploded during the pandemic. And it just speaks to the fact that businesses have to constantly keep updated on what's going on with cybersecurity because it's constantly changing. The next question I have for you guys is, how can businesses and individuals protect themselves from these types of cyber threats?
Well, every time I look, it's kind of crazy. We talk about how sophisticated things are. And every time you look at what the number one, leading cause for breaches are, it comes back to weak passwords, or, not using multi-factor authentication, and weak passwords on old, outdated systems. So just you can have strong passwords on old, outdated systems, and that's still a bad thing. So these very basic things are still the leading cause of breaches. So companies can implement basic hygiene, password hygiene, complex passwords, two-factor authentication, make sure that software updates are constantly in place, firmware updates, and don't let your critical systems be using old software. And then training, I think, is huge. Employees are probably the biggest risk for any organization. At the end of the day, employees are human. Humans make mistakes. Employees are the ones who are in charge of these systems still. So employees are the biggest risk. You got to train them constantly. Just basic cyber security awareness training we do at Leventis twice per month for everybody. So train, and train. Make this the forefront of people's thoughts every day. You can also focus on privacy, compliances, pick something like a GDPR and try to adopt that for your business and evolve through that regulation and following those practices and general policies. That's going to help you adopt strong principles.
Yeah, I think the training is critical. And as you said, we do it twice a month. And a lot of these are repeated trainings, meaning that, the employees are kind of getting trained on the same things over and over again. What that does is it cements the issues. And so that's really important. Other than that, you talked about password security, and the problem, of course, when you implement password requirements like longer passwords, unique passwords, which are all things that are really critical. what do employees do with those? Well, they can't remember them all, so they start writing them down on paper, or they type them in a notepad on their computer, or put them in other secure places. So having your company, or even as an individual, using a password manager is a really, really great tool, and a critical tool, something that you should enforce as a corporate structure. What a password manager does is gives an employee one single master password, and that gives them access to a password vault. And you can even use browser extensions that when the user's logged into this password manager, they can go to a browser. If they're going to log into like their email or something, they don't even have to remember the password. They don't even have to look it up. They can just click a box on that form, and it will autofill it from the password manager. So that's a really great tool. Beyond that, again, with remote workers, you got to make sure that there's good network security. Use a VPN. Make sure that the traffic that's going between your company network and your employees' home networks is encrypted. So VPNs are important, and some other, standard security policies. But those I think are critical things. And even again, we're talking about how businesses are protecting themselves and their employees and their customer data. But individuals, you have to be cautious of this stuff as well. So again, use a password manager. Make sure you're not using the same passwords. Those are things that individuals need to do, even if it doesn't seem that important. Because your Twitter account might not be that important to you, but if you use the same password there as you do for your company email, and somebody hacks Twitter, then that password's available and they're going to use it. They're going to test it on your bank account, and they're going to test it on your, company's email system and things like that. So using unique passwords is another part of password security that's really important.
Yeah, it's interesting, as sophisticated and complex as this problem is, some of these ideas of how to be more secure are very basic. Training, right? Keeping systems updated, using a good password practices, using a password manager. None of these are overly complex to implement. They take time, which is probably why people don't do it, but they're not that difficult or above, so technical that most businesses couldn't adopt some of these practices. All right. So we talked about this. You guys mentioned it in the first question. But I'd like to dive into this a bit more. When we talk about, you mentioned remote work and the issues it's brought up with cybersecurity, with a remote workforce and different challenges with that. You mentioned a few, but let's dive into a bit more, because I think we've got a lot of people out there with remote workers, hybrid environments. It's just very prevalent and pretty new to a lot of organizations, only a couple years in. So what are some best practices for securing remote work environments and helping to prevent cyber attacks?
So, we talked about VPN. Tim just mentioned VPNs. We talked about multi-factor authentication, endpoint security, ensuring any system, any remote device that is connecting to your network, including smartphones, are equipped with endpoint security like antivirus, anti-malware, personal firewalls, that sort of thing. Regular software updates, strong passwords, policies around strong passwords. Employee training we talked about, that's huge. I think also adopting some cloud technologies and utilizing access controls is probably a really good idea. The newest cloud technologies you can implement them very unsecurely, if that's the right word I'm looking for, but
insecurely, maybe?
Insecurely. Well, insecure.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Insecure.
We'll look it up.
How about this? Not secure.
Got
You
it.
want to be careful not to implement cloud technologies on a whim, but there's a lot of strong security measures that you can utilize. So think about if you're on-prem for a lot of things, which goes back to that old outdated concept. You might want to start thinking about adopting cloud technologies and using the security strengths that they have to offer, and monitoring remote activity is big. And what I mean by that is the data, right? Monitor your logs and your security incidents that all of your systems are logging. And you can do that centrally with like an SCIM system, right? Which is going to collect and analyze all of your log files from your network infrastructure and your remote devices. And that can then tell you, hey, you got a problem over here. So if you just are locking your systems down, or you think you are, but you're not actively looking at what your systems are telling you, then that's going to be a big problem. And there's a lot of really good SIEM tools out there that'll quickly analyze every log file that you ship to it. Could be expensive, could be an expensive undertaking, but it's a really good investment and people should look at that.
Yeah, I want to speak to the VPNs just a little bit more. We talked about that as far as an encryption tool, but the other thing that a VPN does is it provides you the ability to know when somebody's coming to you from a approved device. So in other words, like, for example, your email system. Do you want your employees to be able to log in from anywhere? Well, you might want them to, but you also may want to validate that. And you can do that by allowing it only access from a certain IP range or a specific IP address. And when everybody's on a corporate virtual private network, then they can all have that same IP address. So you can lock down systems. A great example is like if you're a business, you probably have a website and you have tools to go in and manage the content on that website, whether it's a e-commerce site or it's a marketing site. You should have the admin to that limited to only IP addresses within your network. And the people that are working remotely, they should be on a VPN so that network range is included. So that way someone can't just guess passwords. They can't even get access to the password screen. And a lot of cloud systems allow for that type of allow listing or blacklisting of devices that would be outside of that network range. So that's another way you can take advantage of a VPN and just limit where people can access from and know that if somebody's getting in there, they have approval, they have authorization because they're on the VPN, they're logged into that and they've been given that security.
Great. Lots of good advice for, I'm sure, many companies facing this issue. Another topic we touched on already, but I think is worth diving in is AI. It's taking everybody by storm in the past, 8 months. It's not new, but I think the rise of it is accelerating. AI and machine learning can be used to detect and prevent cyber attacks. So let's kind of explore it from that angle. Can you share how these technologies are being used in cybersecurity, as well as kind of what limitations they have?
Yeah, I can take a stab at this. This is an exciting topic. I think people should be aware of the strengths of AI and also its their limitations. So that means develop a balanced approach. While AI is certainly impressive and can help you do so many things, you still have to approach it in a way where it's going to make mistakes. So don't only rely on it. But if we think about AI, AI and machine learning, these technologies can analyze vast amounts of data, and they can learn from large volumes of historical data pretty quickly, and then instantly make real-time decisions about real-time data. So that means it can help you with anomaly detections and predictive analysis and real-time threat intelligence. You can also then use it, I suppose, to automate the responses for these incidents that they find, right? Which is largely going to reduce the amount of time that it takes to address a security response and a security incident. So analyzing data and predicting data, that's easy to understand, and it can do it just so much faster than a human can. It's ridiculous. But, an interesting thing to think about, though, is I don't know, but I'm curious to know, is AI being used more today on the defense, or is it being used more today on the offense? Kind of what I was talking about earlier. And, these adversarial attacks can be used for, AI can be being used on the offensive and being used in a negative way and being weaponized, if you will. So you got AI in the defense and you have AI in the offense. So are we going to be living in a world in 10 years from now where it's just computers fighting each other all day long? I don't know. And then there's ethical things to think about, ethical and privacy concerns. But I would say how it's being used today, mostly, in my opinion, from what I see and from what I use, it's anomaly detections and that predictive analytics and the real-time threat intelligence. Those are really powerful things. And just going to the basics of AI and machine learning, being able to make really quick decisions on vast amounts of data.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will get much more sophisticated on the way that attackers use it. But if you think about a tool like ChatGPT, which I think most of us are familiar with today, which it's a free tool you can register for, and it will basically let you ask questions and output real things. Well, the way that attackers can use that even today, one of the things we're trained about when we're watching for phishing attacks is bad grammar, poor use of grammar, things like that, because oftentimes they're coming from countries where English isn't their primary language. And so that's an easy way for us to catch, hey, that's obviously not, a correct marketing message, or that didn't come from someone inside my company. Well, ChatGPT gives them the tools to just write those emails for them, and it's not going to get the grammar wrong most of the time. So
it's so funny you bring that up, by the way, because I swear to God, yesterday I had the same exact thought. I was just hanging around thinking to myself, hey, I had that same exact thought. So
yeah, and beyond that, I mean, just other types of things you can think of, like, for example, we manage a digital lottery from one of our clients. It does very high scale ticket sales, essentially, and so of course there's an intent for bot attacks to try to get in and poach those tickets, and so there's a lot of obviously tools to prevent that. But one of the things you can often do to determine if there was an attempt at like automated entries is the patterns that are used. You can see, okay, somebody's using, it's all capital letters, or it's all with the first name Bob and then different random last names or whatever. Well, AI is just making it easier for them to just automate some of the, kind of the randomization of that. Someone doesn't have to sit there and type a list of different names now. They could just put it into something like ChatGPT and say, output, 100,000 different entries that we could put into this system. And so there's really simple ways that attackers can use that type of tool today. It doesn't even have to be that sophisticated. The tools are there, they're free, and they're going to take advantage of them if they can.
Yeah, so AI can both be the hero and the villain. It's whoever's behind the keyboard, right?
Who's going to win out 10 years from now? I don't know.
I know a topic passionate to you both, and what we touched on already a little bit is the importance of employee training, right? Dan often says, kind of your weakest point in cybersecurity is your people. Many cyber attacks are caused by human error. We talked about it, clicking on bad links or phishing emails, social engineering. All of those attacks are, won or successful through people. So I know one of the approaches we have, and you've both talked about, is education. So talk a little bit more about that, some best practices, some tips on how to keep your workforce trained appropriately on cybersecurity measures, anti-measures type of thing.
Yeah, so no secret, I'm a huge fan of employee training. It's going to, definitely help reduce your overall cyber attacks, right? It's going to reduce your risk. And knowing and understanding that cyber attacks, most of them prey on employees. Tim was just mentioning emails, and those emails are going to people. They're trying to trick people to take an action, because quite honestly, a lot of systems are pretty secure, right? These attackers, they're not always just going in, finding a hole and going into it. They're tricking an employee to take an action, and that action is going to create that hole. So training in cybersecurity is very important to prevent that, right? Prevent the cyber attacks, which means you're going to protect your sensitive data. If you adopt, if you're HIPAA compliant or PCI, to just be compliant, you got to train your employees, but making sure your employees are trained on what those compliances are saying. So creating a culture of training is really important. And to make it effective, I think, like anything, it's got to be engaging, right? If it's just people sitting for 30 minutes every week listening to someone lecture, that's not very engaging. Especially if it's me lecturing, it's going to be super boring. I would say constantly refresh that training, utilize gamification and quizzes and videos and even role playing, like make them use real world examples and make them understand through engaging measures of training. And then stay on top of that, test the employees, make sure that it's constantly on the forefront. I hear some companies do training, like, you'll ask a company, hey, do you guys do cybersecurity training? And they say, yeah, we do it twice a year. That's not good, right? I mean, people are going to forget 2 weeks after they do it, 3 weeks after they do it. It's just not going to be on the forefront of their mind. And all it takes is one little mishap. So train them a lot, train them often, and constantly be testing, constantly give yourself a risk score and assess what your risk is, and make sure that you're passing your own standards as well as the standards of any compliances that you're taking on.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're hearing this, you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I know how to train my employees, how to test them? What are the right questions to ask? What are the right things to fill them in? There are a bunch of companies that do this. They offer this service. Just digital training plans with intervals that they recommend, and you don't have to be an expert on training on cybersecurity. There are companies that do this, but you do need to pursue them. You need to find a solution that fits for the size of your company and the types of employees you have. Now, beyond the basic cybersecurity training that everyone should be going through, phishing, for example, and malware and things like that, it's something that's specific to your industry is worth paying attention to. We happen to be in the coding industry. We write software, applications. And so we also do a thorough training with our employees on what is best coding practice related to security and what are security risks with creating software. And that might not be necessary for your business or for your industry, but there is probably something relevant to your industry that you have to be a little bit more aware of. Whether it's privacy laws around your data and how you're protecting data of your clients, whether it is, if you're selling products online and it's e-commerce related, there are some, kind of special things you have to be aware of from protecting credit card data, protecting customer data. But any industry is going to kind of have their own unique security risks that are outside of these basic needs. So it's worth looking into what are some of the risks for your business and finding a solution to keep your employees trained and protected.
Yeah, sounds like repetitive, continual, are the keys in the training. And I like the gamification. Keep it interesting. If they're just clicking through screens or playing videos, not even watching them, it doesn't do any good. So you have to make it engaging, which can be tricky.
Dan mentioned about testing employees, and what does that mean? Like for our business, for our company, not only do we train these employees on phishing attacks, but we actually phish them. Our IT department regularly, sends out phishing emails with minor signs that they can find and basically helps you keep an eye. And then what does that do for us? Well, one, it reminds people that they've got to pay attention. And it does it in a safer way than if they actually get caught with a phishing attack. So we're able to kind of see who's paying attention, who's continually failing those things so that we can reinforce the training and remind them. But it's helped, personally, it's helped me, even though I don't want to get stung by the company IT department, but it's helped me even in my personal life pay more attention to the types of text messages I'm getting, the types of emails I'm getting, and those signs. And I think those tests, don't only protect the company, but it's protecting me, and it's learning me, it's teaching me to be more aware of how attacks are coming in and what to watch for.
Yeah, you're right. The testing is great, and it puts it into real life scenario, right? You're reading your email, you're like, wait, what is this? It makes you actually stop and think versus, I click through the training, whatever. It's actually happening. So last thing I want to talk about is, we gave the people a lot of tips. They can do a lot of this on their own, some things they can implement. But how can Liventus help businesses with any of their cybersecurity needs, things that maybe businesses can't or really don't want to get into, and where can Liventus step in and help these guys out?
I think we can help from multiple ways. I mean, as a service-based software development company, there's of course things we can do that we offer as a service, but as just an organization in general and a company that takes cybersecurity very seriously, we can also help people with understanding what we do. And that's stuff that we like to do. We like to help others. I mean, that's the business that we're in. So from a software development point of view, we take secure software development very seriously, adhering to best practices and making sure that code is built in a way where applications are resilient to cyber threats, right? Or that could include things like security reviews, secure code training, code audits, vulnerability assessments in the development lifecycle, all these things that we adopt during our secure software development. We can also, as a service, analyze people's existing infrastructure, existing code, make sure that it's passing compliances and that it's secure and there's no gaps. We can help with incident response and remediation if your systems are hacked or your systems, are vulnerable. As well, employee training and awareness, that goes into the stuff that we adopt ourselves. We can show people what everything we've done to make our employees aware, and we can help implement those tools and even the automations that we've built for other companies.
Yeah, I want to highlight what Dan was saying about secure code. Now, obviously, we use that. That's our day-to-day practice when we're writing code, when we're creating applications for our clients. One thing you might not think about, though, is you might have an existing application. How secure is it? Do you know how secure it is? I can't tell you how many times we took over maintaining an application from another vendor. So a client, brought it to us and said, "Hey, can you help us support this application going forward for whatever reason?" And oftentimes, the first thing we'll do usually is a security audit, and we'll look to see, whether the code is secure, but two, whether there's any evidence of past breaches. One of our big areas of business is e-commerce, and almost every single e-commerce site that we've taken over from another business, there was clear evidence of a hack and probably even like current access to credit card data and customer data. And we've seen this over and over again. So get your site audited. We can do that, but it's not a bad idea. Use a third party, somebody that didn't develop it originally, to take a look at it and review it. Even if it's a legacy system that hasn't been touched for a while, you may not know it's been breached. You may not know that your customer's credit card data or your personal information is being leaked and sold without your knowledge. So get that checked out. You don't want to be responsible for that if it turns out that is happening and your customers find out. Obviously, it's a risk for them. It's a legal risk for you. It's a PR risk for you. So that is something that we can certainly help with.
And understanding all those different types of scans, it's amazing what people don't necessarily understand about those scans, in the sense that there's network scans, which are different than application scans. There's static scans, there's dynamic scans, there's, all sorts of different kind of variations and things that go in, authenticated scans or not authenticated. There's all sorts of variations that go into using these security tools that are out there. And you really have to understand what you're doing to understand how to analyze them and what to fix and when to fix it, as well as what was the last thing I was going to say? I think I just forgot it, but
can edit that out.
I think
we'll edit it in later.
I was talking about I was going to bring up pen testing and there's code assisted pen testing. There's just general penetration testing and all these things that you can do. And like you said, Tim, we take on clients all the time, and we take on these systems, and for whatever reason, and it's always the first thing we do is to kind of get a baseline of, okay, what are we dealing with? And I'd say it's every time we're finding just unfortunate holes in people's software, and a lot of them are very largely preventable. So take security seriously. A lot of in the software development world, a lot of direction revolves mainly around functionality, right? Security is an afterthought, and it really needs to be a forethought, and it needs to be brought into your development lifecycle. It needs to be something that you take on every day, just like organizations are supposed to train their employees a lot, and that's what we're talking about. In your software development lifecycle, security isn't an addition. It should just be embedded in the practices and the way that you go about things. And I think probably 95% of the time, it's not. And that's a problem.
And it's hard for businesses to detect if their software wasn't built in a secure manner. It's largely invisible, which makes it important for people when they're hiring firms or talking to firms that they ask about their security methods and their practices. It's not a foolproof way, but at least if you're hearing that they can answer the question, you might have a little better odds that they're building secure software for you.
Right.
So that's it. That's it for today's episode. Very interesting. I think we covered a lot of different things. We talked about AI, its impact, both as a hero and a villain. We talked about remote work and its impact on security issues. We talked about some basic methods that people can use to keep them more secure, just like training, secure password methods, secure password managers, keeping your systems updated. We talked about training, how important training is, kind of dove into that a little bit more. And then obviously we talked about how firms that build software like Liventus can build it in a more secure way and how we approach it.
Hey, we should do a podcast where it's just two AI bots talking to each other and see what that's like.
That would be...
The Tim bot and the bot and see which one wins.
Yeah, I'm afraid. I know. I'm afraid they're going to beat us. Yeah, I don't know. All right. Thank you both for joining us today and sharing your insights. I think it was a great discussion. Listeners, if you have questions or comments on today's episode, please reach out to us on social media or email. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, we'll wrap up this episode of Liventus Podcast LivByte. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.